Hello everybody, this is the Love Yourself Guru and welcome to the Love Yourself TV and welcome to day 18 of Ramadan 2022 with the Guru, and today's word is the future. We're going to be taking a closer look at the future and, God willing, how to build a really healthy future and take a different perspective on what the future really means to us. Now, you'll see in a lot of my videos, I always say that our lives are in the present moment. That means our lives are in the present moment. That means that we really shouldn't focus on the past and we shouldn't really focus on the future, because everything here is in the present. Now, what does that mean? Shouldn't really focus on the past or the future, It doesn't mean to eliminate them, no, because you can't eliminate them. You can't just eliminate them from your mind. And it means to build a healthy relationship with them. So to build a really healthy relationship with your past, which we'll do in another episode, God willing. This episode is about building a healthy relationship with the future. Now, when you build a healthy relationship with the future, then your present becomes a much more beautiful, serene, peaceful place to live. And when you have a toxic relationship with the future, it looks like a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, a lot of what ifs, and you bring that into the present. So it's not about eliminating the fact that you have a future, no, and just living in the present, no. It's being aware that you have a future, but building a healthy relationship with it rather than a toxic one. And so this is how I built a really healthy relationship with the future. So before the Love Yourself movement, I really had a toxic relationship with the future. My future, anything to do with the future, it looked like worry, anxiety, and a lot of what ifs. What if? And it literally came into my present. And so there was a lot of fear, and that fear, because I was thinking about it all the time and I was so scared, I brought that vibration into my present. And then I realized, well, that was just an illusion, that my mind was just throwing an illusion at me. And because you only live the present moment, I decided to eliminate worry and eliminate anxiety, but I also decided that I needed to build a healthy relationship with the future. I couldn't eliminate the future. I needed to build a healthy relationship with the future so I would feel comfortable with it, so I could welcome it. Yes. And the more I welcomed it and the more I felt comfortable with it, the more I was able to enjoy my present and to be at peace with my present. And so I did that with two things and two ways, and we're going to discuss it in this video. So how do you build a healthy relationship with the future? Is you do two things. This is what I did. Number one is I split I reflected on my future. I reflected on my future and I thought, right, I'm going to eliminate worry and anxiety and fear from my future. And I intend on building a very healthy relationship with my future. I'm going to be best friends with my future, God willing. Okay, that's number one, the intention. Number two is I split my future into two parts, part one and part two. So part one was my future here, God willing, in this world. And number two was my future, part two was my future, God willing, when I pass to the other side, God willing. So I realized that, okay, so we've got three things here. The relationship that I had with the future before, it was toxic, it was wrong, it was an illusion, okay? And I was just worrying things about hadn't even occurred. That I put X on it. And then I realized I have future part one and I have future part two. Future part one is me living in this world. Future part two is me, God willing, when I transition to the other side in the year after. They're both connected. You'll see how they're both connected. But in order for me, when I was worrying, when I was in a state of worrying about my future, I didn't even think of part two. I was just so concerned about part one. But the more happy and content and peaceful you are with part one, the more you prepare for part two. So see how they're connected. Okay, so let's get to how I felt comfortable and I built a healthy relationship with part one of my future, God willing. First of all, I I intended that I wanted to build a healthy relationship with my future, and I wanted to befriend my future. Number 2 is I actually acknowledged and identified that my creator is with me all the time. So my creator was with me in my past. My creator is, God willing, is with me in my present, and my creator is going to be with me in my future. Wherever I go, my creator is always with me. Straight away, I feel safe and secure. Straight away, I know that wherever I go, on my timeline of my life here on earth, my creator is with me in the whole timeline. Therefore, there's nothing to worry or fear, God willing. I'm strong. I've got my creator, I'm safe and secure, thank God, 1 billion times. And my creator, God willing, God willing, God willing, will send me all of his angels, God willing, God willing, God willing. So that was number 2. And number 3, to get comfortable and have a healthy relationship with the future, is to say, okay, right. I actually wrote down that I want to achieve that. I want to do that. Like, I had a list of things that I wanted to achieve and wanted to do, God willing. So I wrote them down, I defined them. And then they were like, it was like, they were at the back. They were at the back, and I could see them, okay? I needed to write them down to actually know what to do on a daily basis. So every day, once I defined where I wanted to head, every day till today, I do what's at hand. I do what I need to do to be in alignment with where I want to go, with where I've defined. I don't worry about whether or not I get there, or how it's going to unfold, yes, at all. I've written where I want to go, and I do what I need to do every day. Whatever comes I need to do, like today I need to do the video, today I need to send an email, today I need to do this. I do what I needed to do. I do every single day, and then I leave the unfolding of the events to my creator. I've given my whole future to my creator, to my creators. My responsibility is to take action every day, and then however my creator wants it to unfold, then it will unfold like my creator wants it to unfold. And tried and tested, the less I focused on how the outcome was going to unfold and put trust in my creator and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more it unfolded in unimaginable ways, like ways I couldn't even imagine. Brilliant, absolutely amazing ways. So I've just realized it's just honestly, to be comfortable with the future and to build a healthy relationship with the future is to do what you need to do every day, and then leave the unfolding of how things unfold to your creator. Like, have a roadmap of, like, for instance, where you want to head, but don't worry about the unfolding, how it's going to unfold. It will unfold beautifully because it's in your creator's hands. So that's how I really felt comfortable with my future part 1. And it was just a mindset I put myself in. Now that I was comfortable with part 1, okay, I had more space in there, didn't I? I had more energy. I was more at peace. So then I thought, oh, I've got a part 2. I've got a part 2 that I need to prepare for. I need, just like for instance, every day I take action for my part 1 here, I need to take action for my part 2 over there, God willing. Okay, so let's go to part 2. How did I feel comfortable about my future part 2? Number 1 is that, again, I realized that on the timeline, so from here till my end of my journey here on this world, part 1, my creator's with me. Same thing with the year after. I'm going to be with my creator. How beautiful is that? It's absolutely wonderful, brilliant. I'm going to be with my creator. So that automatically puts you in a sense, puts your soul in a space of ease and peace because you're with your creator. So that was number 1. Number 2 is that I acknowledge that I'm a visitor here in part 1. I'm a visitor here in part 1, but I intend to be a good visitor, because if I'm not a good visitor here in part 1, my part 2 is not going to be very nice. I need to be a good visitor here. So I'm looking at me living in the world like a hotel, okay? I need to be a good visitor. I can't trash the hotel. I have to look after the hotel. I have to look after the earth. I have to look after the people in the hotel. I have to be nice to people. I have to smile. I have to be nice to myself. I have to be a good visitor in order for my part 2 future to be very nice. So number 1 is to acknowledge that the curator is always with you. Number 2 is to acknowledge that Your time here is temporary. You're a visitor in part one, but part two is forever. So we need to be we all need to be very good visitors here, God willing. Very, very good, and good with each other, God willing. And then number 3 is that now that I've acknowledged that I need to be a good visitor, and I've acknowledged that part 2 is forever, then I have to start planning. So, like, for instance, in part 1, how I said, well, I know I wrote down where I'm heading and every day I'm going to take action. I don't worry about what will unfold, if it will unfold exactly like I've written down or anywhere close to I've written down. It's just that gives me, like, I know where I'm heading. It's the same thing with my future number 2. Where do I want to go with future number 2? I have to write down, well, God willing, do I want to go to heaven? God willing, where do I want to go? You need to identify that. I needed to identify that. So I need to go. I identified that, well, God willing, God willing, God willing, I want to go to paradise, God willing. Please, God, we all go to paradise. Please, God, all of us, the whole of humanity. Please, God. So I need to acknowledge that I want to get to paradise. Okay, so what actions do I do here as a visitor? Yes, as a visitor, what actions do I need to do to get there? That's it. It's that simple. And so I started planning. And so how do you start planning? That everything, and so I started to link everything that I do in part one of my future, which is here. Yes, which is I take action every day. Everything I do here, I link it with part 2. So God willing, God willing, God willing, I'm looking after my husband, I'm looking after my children. Okay, I'm looking after them, God willing, because I want to be, God willing, a good visitor here, a good visitor here. I want my children to grow up, bless them, bless them, bless them, bless them, that I've given them, bless them, all the love and the support that they've needed. And so it's the same with my husband. And so I know that if I do that, God willing, I'm putting a brick, I'm building a brick for my house in part 2. Let's say, for instance, with my work, whatever work you do, when you do your work properly, God willing, and you're sincere and you're honest in your work, then God willing, you're building a brick for your future part 2. And it's really, really what it is it's really starting to being conscious. Cleaning the energy in part 1, so that God willing, the things that you do in part 1 will carry you over to part 2. Okay, so that's it. That's basically it. First of all, you have to clean the energy in part 1, remove the worry, remove the anxiety, remove everything. You do the steps that I did in part 1. You're at peace with part 1, and you're taking action every day. When you take action every day, that will unfold in your part 1 here. But also, every single action you take here, God willing, will also be carried on to your part 2. So it's really having an awareness that everything you do here, God willing, should be aligned to where you want to go in part 2. So align, God willing, with where you're heading here, and aligned also with where you want to go to part 2. You can't separate them. You can't separate. You can't separate it. I promise you, you can't separate it. You can't separate it, God willing. Whatever you do here, God willing, will be taken over, please God, to your future part 2, God willing. So for this Ramadan, I just want you to sit down, God willing, and reflect on your future part 1 and your future part 2, God willing, and the things that you can do, God willing, to create the future part 1 that you want, aligned with the future part 2 that you want, which is a beautiful paradise, please God, for all of us. And everything is interlinked. And so it's probably I don't know whether it was confusing, this episode, but it's very clear in my mind. I hope it helped you, and I hope this Ramadan, God willing, will really define, God willing, and connect our future part 1 with our future part 2, and have a healthy relationship, God willing. And in this world, God willing, have a beautiful world in this world and in our future part 2 world. I love you loads. Have a brilliant, beautiful, absolutely amazing one.